Okay, here's the situation. There are 5 people in great peril. They'll be saved if you change the course of an oncoming train. Changing this course, however, requires the death of an innocent bystander. Do you change the course? Well, obviously, more people will be better off if you do, and you should do whatever necessary for the sake of the greater good. Now, hold on. Condemning a person to death is a moral injustice. Using their body for any gain is against an objective moral imperative. So, which is the better choice? Well, here are the stats. 9 out of 10 people will opt to switch courses, thus sacrificing 1 to save 5, but the more hands-on and gruesome that choice becomes, the less people opt to make it. So if instead of switching courses, you have to physically push someone in the way to sacrifice them, 9 out of 10 people will opt to not sacrifice. Most people tend to act according to the greatest good in some scenarios, but also act for goodness' sake for others. Is that allowed? Should there be a coherent answer for all situations? No, I checked. There shouldn't. But here's why. So one coherent answer would suggest that there's only one way to think about things. Think this way, get right answer. Think any other way, get wrong answer. But the trolley train problem shows us that there's at least 2 ways of thinking, and they both can get the right answer sometimes. You can think of these ways of thinking as frameworks. The first framework wants you to think about and answer the question, what does the most good? Which in these cases means you should sacrifice. And the second framework wants you to think about and answer, does one choice betray my duty to do no wrong? Which suggests that you should not sacrifice. The trolley train problem is an example of one of a few edge cases. They draw out the differences between different frameworks, but in the vast majority of cases, in any given situation, both frameworks will lead you to the same conclusion. You can think of these frameworks like cookie cutters. You have a blob of dough, that being all the situations in life where you can make decisions. Let's say this little piece here asks what to do about our train trolley problem. And right in here, let's say, is whether or not to put away your shopping cart after getting groceries. The dough is split up into an endless amount of different choices you have to make. So, you place down your cookie cutter, and it outlines which decisions you'll correctly make and which ones you'll get wrong. The framework as a cookie cutter symbolizes a consistent divider on how you'll make decisions. In the case of the train trolley problem, it is literally an edge case. If you put down the greatest good cutter onto decision space, it will be correct when deciding to flip a switch to save 5, but it will be wrong when deciding to push someone in the way. The deontological do no wrong cutter will be the inverse. They do not allow any sacrifices, so their switch case answer to not sacrifice will look wrong. And the push case, they can cookie-arize. And what of the shopping cart? Both frameworks super engulf that case and can obviously get to the correct choice. Put away the shopping cart. Thanks. As you can see, frameworks will have a certain amount of coverage for all possible decisions. This is why we make mistakes. Our frameworks might be really helpful a lot of the time, but there's always going to be some exhaustive circumstance which makes the cookie cutter lop off. Now you might say, Mason, I am divine, I am perfect. All of my decisions are correct, and my cookie cutter outlines the shape of the dough. If I know my framework will be wrong in some cases, then why can't I just change my thought process so that I can encompass all the dough that I see? Well, you can. Our framework might take example from the greatest good cutter, for instance, and we might see that the greatest good cutter lops off certain amounts of dough, so then we amend our framework to take in the do no wrong tidbits. So then we have coverage for both cases of the trolley train problem. And you can absolutely keep doing this with all decisions you have to make, but this is where stuff goes nuts. The dough will tend to change. You see, the dough represents all things in your life with unique circumstances and details. It's your reality, and the cutters are what to do with that reality. But this reality is not really the reality, it's your perception of reality. Your biases and preconceived notions also make their way into the dough and can highly influence what reality looks like. Your cookie cutter might perfectly match your dough by the end of fierce self-reflection, but the dough itself can still be wrong. If you have this perfect framework, a way to only make good decisions, and you pass that along to someone else, they might think you're crazy because it doesn't match what their dough is. So you have these frameworks and they point us towards a conclusion. But we have these biases and preconceived notions that change the starting point, which means two people with the same framework and different starting points will have different conclusions. Most people want to get to a shared conclusion though. These starting points complicate the matter and can be really annoying in getting a coherent, final, objective conclusion. And now we arrive at the main point, the main purpose for identifying and comparing frameworks. We want to know how can we, with all of these annoying blobs of dough and reality and biases and mess, how can we arrive at, through the use of frameworks, arrive at some big, standard, normal conclusion that we can look at and say, yep, that's the one. That's the right answer. How do we find in all situations the normative conclusion? I don't have an answer for that. But there is a process to get closer towards a normative conclusion. The process utilizes a key human function that is built into our brains. You see, humans really like to judge if one thing is better than another. So step 1, we consider a framework different from our own. Step 2, we look through the lens of that framework and we try to see what conclusions and consequences happen in that reality. And then step 3, we compare that reality to the one we currently live in and see which one we like more. Step 4, if that new framework creates a better world to live in, then simply alter your framework to accommodate the benefits of the other one. And if it doesn't end up being better, then just repeat the process with the new one. You see, you can kind of just mix and match how to interpret and act in the world and find which one works best. You put on a new pair of shades and then see what reality looks like through those. Then you can keep swapping them out until you find a worldview that's pretty. My man Socrates probably believed that virtue could be taught. Morality can be discovered. So if you explore all these frameworks and you find other belief systems and what they can offer, then it doesn't really matter what biases you have as you expand your virtues and as you acquire a better knowledge of all the different applications of morality. He also probably said that the unexamined life is not worth living. You need to continually test to see if your outlook is the correct one, and similar to the scientific method, the process is never over. By continually contrasting your understanding with new potential understandings, you can improve and improve until you get closer to the one normative conclusion. You think about the wisest people, the old sages, and you think about maybe like some divine being, you see these ideas relate to some notion of perception. Omniscience is not just knowing all, but seeing all. You can work towards, but not arrive at, these ideas by looking through different frameworks. You see more and more realities and then expand your perception from them. This very video is a framework. If you view the world as views of the world, then you now have a new tool to acquire new tools, and you can now understand that you can mix and match value systems to get a better end. Let's go back to the trolley train problem. We have our biases, we have our frameworks, we have our conclusions, but now we also have a tool to interpret the frameworks. We observe that the outcomes of the greatest good cases, that world doesn't seem so bad. We observe that in the do no wrong cases, that world looks okay too. We use these to make a new framework. Maybe a better one in this case is that both of their decisions in the problem are valid ones. I mean, how do we discuss morality when something immoral happens no matter what? But with that, we now have access to more options as to what to conclude. And we can make conclusions from those conclusions about right and wrong more ably and more thoughtfully than we could before. Philosophy, often disregarded nowadays, is in the business of establishing and evaluating these frameworks. The dusty subject of old guys talking in circles, it was really about establishing a new way to view things, which can be a helpful tool when trying to make an informed decision. Try to pay attention to the frameworks that pop up in your life, either through some old book or some person with a different set of values from your own, and see if you can benefit from them. Okay, thanks. Bye.